real estate is a tough business. We will share stories here that you won't hear anywhere else. So join us to learn the truth and avoid those costly mistakes.
We're John and Kalen Sledge, and this is the Think Like an Appraiser podcast, Cautionary Tales in Real Estate.
Since this is our first podcast, I thought we'd just take a minute to introduce ourselves. So John, tell us about your journey in real estate.
Well, I retired as an appraiser after 15 years. I loved lots of parts of the appraisal process, but I was just trading time for money. So by leaving appraising, I was able to use my expertise to create a number of new businesses. We have a measurement company where we work with real estate agents, investors, and homeowners to ensure that they have an accurate size of the home that they're buying, selling, or renovating.
Explain that, because I don't think people understand why verifying home size is important and why they can't just look at public records to get that information.
Well, typically when a home's listed, the agent is taking the number from public records, and it's not always accurate. The people that work at the county, they don't actually go and measure the home. They're taking that information from a third party, whether it's a builder or somewhere else, and it's not information that's ever verified. So we always recommend that buyers or sellers know the size of the home, because it's a price per square foot business. And if you don't have an accurate size, you're not going to have an accurate value on the home.
Because that information is given to the public entities, whoever they are, that's given voluntarily, or plans are turned in to get building permits, but we know that original building plans are changed many times, which then that can cause a discrepancy in what is in public records and what is actually built.
Right, because they're not necessarily getting the final plans, or if additions have been done over the years, or any changes that have been made. So
we're going to be doing some cautionary tales about home size. We feel very passionately about having an accurate home size, because it is a price per square foot industry that we're in.
And most people believe that what the county or the public records say is an accurate number, and that's not always the case. Kalen and I, we also have continued to invest in real estate ourselves. I became a registered contractor to work on the projects that we're renovating. And we also developed Think Like an Appraiser. And we have a passion and a mission to educate and mentor real estate agents and investors, and to look at their deals as an appraiser would, so that they can ensure that they've done their due diligence and have really taken an analytical view on the projects that they're working on. And one of the reasons that I felt like I needed to leave appraising was I didn't want a conflict of interest when I'm sharing my valuation expertise. While I enjoyed most of what I did as an appraiser, the analytical piece and the site visits where I was able to go out and view homes and look at architectural details, I always dreaded the appraisals where renovation mistakes were made that could have been avoided with proper research and due diligence.
That's exactly the goal of our podcast, is we're going to try to help people avoid mistakes.
Yeah, that's what we're here for.
Well, a little bit about myself. So I started teaching in 1991, and during that time, I was also a real estate investor. I remodeled several homes, was a landlord, and then John and I met in 2011, and we started investing together in 2012. When we were first married, and I'd hear words like valuation, comparable sales, adjustments, quality rating, home sketch, gross living area, ARV, it sounded like Charlie Brown's teacher talking. Mwah, mwah, mwah. I didn't understand any of those things that you said. And I had been investing in real estate, but I don't think I was doing a good job of it. And so when we did this first project in 2012, do you remember how I would ask questions? You would say things like, we won't get much return if we do that particular thing. Or changing the shower door would bring this bathroom up to a Q3.
No, yeah, I remember making those comments, and you would look at me like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, that was a crazy time because you spoke a language that I think you thought other people understood.
Oh, I did. And it took us having conversations for me to understand that I was speaking a language that nobody else had been exposed to.
I think it's one of those things where just like when I was teaching, I would use lingo all the time, that we used in the classroom, that we used talking about students, and you forget that other people don't know that terminology. Right. So we had a hard time communicating in the beginning because I just wasn't understanding what you were talking about.
Right. And no, it definitely was difficult. And that once I realized that, then we began to discuss and explain how these things worked and what they meant and how we should look at our renovation projects.
Well, and as I learned more about the appraisal process through you, because I'll be honest, I didn't know anything about the appraisal process. All I knew is the appraiser needed to come, and then we hoped that whatever property we were dealing with appraised for what it needed to. That was about the extent of my knowledge.
And that's what most people feel.
And so as I learned more about it, I began to realize, this is pretty important information. And through our projects, if the goal of the project was to reach a certain ARV, then maybe we needed to think like an appraiser to achieve that ARV, because the appraiser is the one determining the value.
He is, or she is, and you also need to determine that figure before you ever begin the project.
Exactly.
So our show's about cautionary tales in real estate, and we're going to have guests on each week that will tell their stories and share their stories so that we can help you avoid costly mistakes. And today, we're going to share one of ours.
We have quite a few to share, but we're going to focus on one. So those of you that are watching the video version, you'll be able to see the pictures, and if not, we'll try to explain it.
Right. So we did a renovation project, and this was an 80-year-old home that we completely renovated every aspect of the home. And we were getting towards the end of the project and needed to get some 80-year-old white oak floors that needed to be sanded and refinished. And one of the contractors we worked with for years as a carpenter had told us, I stain floors.
Well, we had worked with this guy. So this house, we redid this house 2019, 2020.
Right.
So this is recent. So we had been working with this guy for 5 years?
5 years, yeah.
This was someone that we knew very well. He had keys to our home. He took care of things when we went on a trip. And this was a guy that we knew well. He started off as a framer for us.
Right. And did trim carpentry and did all sorts of different work over the years and was highly skilled and very detail oriented. So when he said he could sand and stain floors and this is the materials he needed, we just were sure that it was going to turn out great.
Well, and to be honest, what he quoted us was cheaper than...
Right.
We went the cheap route this time. We had to have a company come and give us a bid, and we thought it was too high. And we knew that this guy, we thought we could trust him.
Right. He needed some more.
And so we went this route.
So we had to leave the house so he could sand and stain and seal the floors. And when we got back at the end of the job, if you see in the video, you can see they were gray and streaky and different sheens throughout the house.
It looks like there are shadows in this picture, but those are not shadows. That was the stain work that he did. So we were trying to go for kind of a whitewashed look, and it was horrible. So we had done an addition on this house. We bought it and it was a 3-2?
3-2.
But it was about, how many square feet?
1,400 square feet.
And then we added on
another
a master
500
bedroom. And so we were at about 1,800 square feet. And the entire thing was a disaster. The floor was I cried. And we were at the end of this project.
This was the last, besides a few punch list items, this was the last thing we were going to do, and it was hitting the market. And he had moved on to another job, and we came to check out the work, and were shocked.
Yeah, he had already left. You're right.
He moved on.
He had cleaned out his stuff, and he was gone, and we walked in, and whatever he used, this was 2 days later, wasn't even dry.
Right.
Remember? I mean, we walked in and it was sticky and gummy and streaky. And we knew in this price point, this was a...
Yeah, it had to be right.
Yeah, we were going to put this house on the market for $525,000. It could not look like this.
No. And so what did we have to do? We had to let the floors completely dry. We called in the original company that was going to do the work. They had to come in and resand the whole house, stain, seal.
It took them 10 days to fix it, wasn't it? It was close. I know it was 7. And
it was 10 days total.
10 days.
Just to fix it.
Just to fix
After
it.
it had already taken about a week to get to the point we were at.
And I was so afraid. They wanted to know what we wanted to stain it. I was fearful of putting anything else on there, so we ended up, here's some after pictures, and they turned out beautiful.
We just did a natural oak floor.
We did just a polyurethane.
With a polyurethane seal on it. And as you can tell from the first picture to the second, night and day.
It turned out beautiful. And then when we put it on the market and staged it, it was a gorgeous room.
Yeah. The unfortunate piece and the lesson we learned was that it cost an additional $5,000, and we lost 10 days before putting the house on the market.
Which this was the house that we put on the market the day that the president announced that COVID was a pandemic and a national emergency, I believe. That was the day that it hit MLS, and we made it through that, but this is why we have gray hair.
It is. Since this is Cautionary Tales in real estate, we want to help you understand what we should have done to help you avoid costly mistakes when you are working on your renovation project.
Yeah, that's the goal of this podcast, is to learn from other people's mistakes.
It is. And what we did is we made a decision based on emotion because we were at the end of a project and we were trying to save a little bit of money.
Well, and we were behind on our timeline too,
right.
As many times you are.
And we had somebody on site that could start the next day rather than waiting for another contractor to come in and pay them more money.
And we didn't do what we knew we should have done, which was to stop, look at the data, do our research, not base a decision on emotion, and we failed to do that.
We did.
And we paid the price.
We did. It cost us in time and money. And one of the things when you're dealing with flooring is, especially when you're sanding and refinishing old wood floors, because those are some of the most expensive flooring available.
Right. If you'd want to replace, if you'd put that into a house,
cost prohibitive.
I mean,
it would have to be a very expensive house to support that type of flooring.
Right. As far as, sure.
And so one of the things we learned is when you're working with this type of floors and that type of work, you need to hire somebody that does that every day.
Well, the first problem was we had the flooring company came out and told us it was red oak, or one company told us it was red oak. Another company told us it was white oak. So the first thing you need to do is make sure you know what kind of oak you're dealing with.
Right. It was the distributor, the people that were selling wood for us to patch some areas where we had removed some walls. When I took them a piece, said, "Oh yeah, this is red oak, and we have that in stock," and sold it to us. And we
found out
after we had made all our patches, and the company that does the work with wood flooring every day came in and said, "Oh, you have red oak here and white oak over there." And so then they had to do some staining on the new wood to make it look like the original wood flooring in the house, and did a beautiful job.
Right. But so we should have gotten since we had different opinions, we probably should have asked a third party to find out really what kind of wood we were dealing with.
Right.
And we failed to do that. So
another mistake.
We won't do that again.
But the key is to always stop, step back, evaluate each piece to ensure that you're making the right decision.
We also based the decision, like we talked earlier, this was a guy we trusted and we knew. And what we should have done is we should have asked to see some work
that he had done,
what floors he had done. And because we knew him and trusted him, we didn't think we had to do that. And we should have done that.
Right. Because he was in a position where he wanted some additional work, felt like he could do the job. And because he'd done so much work for us previously and had done a good job in other arenas, we took him at his word and moved forward. And
we did not do our research and due diligence.
We did not. And we'd made a decision that we lived to regret. We were able to resolve it and move forward and get the home sold. But it definitely was a costly mistake.
Well, it was. It was. Because had we not been behind schedule and had we not spent 3 full weeks on the floor, we probably could have gotten the house on the market before the pandemic, and
probably would have been sold before the pandemic was ever announced.
So that was interesting how small things do, and one thing affects the next. We know in construction, that's just the way that works.
Right, because as long as they were in there working on the floors, we couldn't do any punch list items. We had to wait till it was completely done before we could go in and touch up paint and finish up some hardware issues.
So when you're redoing hardwood floors, that is a special art to do it well. So that is definitely a place to splurge, because flooring is such a big part of determining a home's value from an appraiser standpoint.
No doubt.
Of course, the comparable sales come into play, but...
Right, but it does add value depending on your market, but because it's all based on quality ratings that the appraiser does. And white oak floors, refinished, are one of the higher quality of any other flooring. And so when you have the opportunity in an old home like this and they can be redone, it's worth the money. You'll get your money back out rather than pulling it out and starting over. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Please do us a favor and subscribe or follow on the platform that you listen to your podcasts on. And also, if you would leave a review, we sure would appreciate that.
And if you find value in our content and you find the topic of real estate interesting, we'd love for you to join our Think Like an Appraiser community. You can go to thinklikeanappraiser.com and join there. Thanks a lot.
See you next time.